Husband lied about a prenup to his sister to keep her inheritance. Now I'm wondering if I can even trust him? Misunderstandings are always dangerous if not left uncleared. I guess I found that out the hard way. But after knowing how my husband is around his family and how I didn't know a huge part of his character, I'm having doubts about the man I married. I'm getting sick of constantly worrying about hypothetical situations, and so I wanted to know if I'm overthinking and being an asshole by putting my husband on the spot, or should I really think things through again? So I work in the IT sector, and because all my work mostly requires just an internet connection and a computer, I prefer to do it from home. The company I work for handles security work for websites, and there isn't a hardcore work environment that requires me to be at the office as long as I am reachable and willing to work at any hour. Now my sister-in-law was in town for a few days for something, and because she's family I offered her to stay at our home instead of a hotel. I didn't really mind since I'm usually alone while my husband goes to work. That's why last week my sister-in-law was at my place when I was sorting through some of my personal stuff. I was on my computer with documents lying around me. When my sister-in-law saw me like that, she asked me if she should step out for a few hours while I worked, but I told her it wasn't work-related and she could stay. She then came over and asked what it was if it's not work. I told her I was going through my assets and other finances and filing them in order because it's been a while since I looked through them. Her reply was really unexpected and something that made me curious. She asked me if these papers are related to the prenup I signed before marrying her brother. I was utterly confused at her words because I never signed any prenup, and I told her so. She looked a little confused but didn't push it. That evening when my husband came over, I noticed that my sister-in-law was looking strangely at him. I caught her staring at his direction, and it almost seemed like her gaze would kill him. I thought it must have been a sibling strife and decided not to meddle. I did ask my husband that night whether he had a fight with his sister, but he denied anything like that. The next morning her behavior didn't change, and I was a little bit confused and asked her what was up and why is she glaring daggers at her brother. My husband looked up from his coffee and was looking confused. He was almost surprised to hear my question, as if he hadn't noticed anything. My sister-in-law said that my husband already knew what he did and deserves all the hate she was giving him. Now we both were baffled. I asked my husband what he did and why he would piss off a guest in our house, but he just surrendered and said he had no idea what was going on. I figured there must have been a misunderstanding and asked my sister-in-law to explain what was happening. I never expected to hear her say these words though. My sister-in-law told me that about a year after we got married she noticed that my husband and I were having some issues between us. She didn't want to meddle in our business and had no intentions of asking him about what exactly was going on. But she did have concerns about the property and funds their parents left them after their accident. She told me that because their parents' death was so sudden they didn't have time to settle all of their affairs, and all their inheritance was passed over to her brother, who was of age at that time. She said that he was supposed to divide the assets equally after she became an adult and was able to handle her finances, but so far he hadn't given her her part of the share. So when she noticed that my marriage had a decent chance of not working out and it ending in a divorce, she contacted her brother and asked him to settle the legal matters before everything was taken into account in our divorce settlements. But her brother told her that she doesn't have to worry about such things, as I have signed a prenup before our marriage and we will both keep all our assets if we end up getting divorced. By the time she finished explaining everything, she was seething with anger. I looked at my husband and asked him if it was true, and he confirmed it. I was shocked to hear it. I didn't know what reason he had to lie about that to his own sister, but the mere fact that he tried to fool her and withhold what was rightfully hers didn't sit right with me. Moreover, why would he use me to get out of something and not tell me? It wasn't a small lie either. A prenup is a pretty big thing. I felt really uncomfortable at that moment, but didn't want to fight in front of my sister-in-law. I decided to stay silent and discuss the matter in privacy. But of course my Sil had no such qualms. She was persistent and demanded an explanation from him. At least my husband had the sense to look guilty about what he did. He spouted some nonsense about how he was already having troubles with me at that time and did not want to get into any legal drama. That's why he told her the first thing that popped into his head that would surely push the matter on hold for a while. He apologized to his sister and said he is sorry about lying to her like that. Of course neither me nor she believed anything he was saying, but I just kept my mouth shut. My sister-in-law told him that if he really is sorry he should get to the matter right away and pass on her share of inheritance. Before leaving the room she just gave me a weird look and stayed in the guest room all day. At night she left to have dinner outside and informed me over a text that she'd be coming home late. She told me not to wait up and that she'd probably come and pack her stuff before catching an early morning flight back home. That night I asked my husband why exactly did he lie to his sister, and even if he had his reasons, why didn't he at least tell me about using our relationship as the basis of a lie? Before he could say anything I told him not to spout the same story he told my sister-in-law, because I already knew that's full of crap. He looked a little sad and told me to remember the reasons for our fights that year. He said we were struggling to cope financially with our student debts because we had spent the majority of the funds on the fancy wedding I wanted. He told me when his sister brought up splitting the inheritance he didn't really want to do that because he depended on it in case he went bankrupt. I didn't know how to react to that. This man was telling me that he fooled his only family left in this world so he could make sure that his future was protected. It does make sense from a practical point of view, but what does it say about the kind of person he is? He was willing to risk a potential fallout with his sister for something that wasn't even guaranteed. And how can I trust that he wouldn't do the same to me if somehow we had more problems in the future? This kind of man can easily throw me under the bus if it was a choice about saving his own neck. Since that day I've been having really conflicted feelings about everything. I've been doubting our relationship and wondering if it's even worth it to put effort into such a marriage. Am I the here for thinking such things? Should I give my husband the benefit of the doubt? Update: I was bottling up all my emotions for a few weeks now. I was starting to have a lot of insecurities and trust issues and finally decided to talk about it to my husband. It didn't feel right to keep overthinking about things and suffer in silence when a simple conversation could give me the mental peace I needed. So last night I sat with him and told him everything that was on my mind. I told him about how his lies have given me trust issues and I worry that no matter what I don't think he'll be able to prioritize his family over himself. I told him that I've been constantly thinking about how easy it was for a few financial struggles to push us to such limits that even his sister thought we'd end up getting divorced, and how no matter how hard I try I can't help but worry how we would ever be able to deal with problems when we'll have kids to look after. I was so frustrated over everything that my emotions started flowing out in the form of tears, and my husband had to hold me for a while before I was able to collect myself. Once I was better, he told me that no matter what he said, my trust issues wouldn't just disappear with a few words, and that's why I'll have to choose to believe in him, while he showed me with his actions that he could be trusted. He told me that instead of looking at our first year of marriage as a sign of how the rest of our life would be, I should look at how even after a million arguments we were still able to be with each other and stay together all this while. His words were nowhere near enough to provide me the comfort I wanted or give me the mental peace I was seeking, but they did give me a sense of reality. All this while I was making hypothetical situations in my mind and predicting how my husband would react in them, but that was my main issue. I came to realize that I can't possibly predict my husband's behavior in a situation, and that only time would tell if he's a good man or not. All I can do is trust in the man I married, and if someday things go south ways, I'll just have to deal with those consequences the best way I could. For context, my wife, 33 female, and I, 32 male, have known each other since our freshman year at college. We've been married 8 years and have a 4-year-old daughter. In 2016 I hit a bad patch in my life. I started drinking in January. Then I got involved with some rough people and had a 4-month stint doing drugs. August 27th will hit my 6-year anniversary of being alcohol and drugs. It's important to note, my father-in-law has never particularly cared for me. When I admitted to having a substance problem, he continued using that as ammunition against me. 4 months ago, my wife's entire family went over to his house for dinner one evening. About an hour after we arrived back home, he showed up pounding our door. When I answered, he barged his way in while accusing me of stealing his gold chain necklace to sell for money. He had a test in his hand and demanded I take it. After a few minutes of arguing, I was willing to take the test just to shut him up. As I went into the bathroom, he caught the door behind me and said, "People like you know all the tricks, you're taking it in front of me." At that point, both my wife and I were livid. We asked him to leave and I refused his test. But he wouldn't go until I produced his missing necklace. My wife told him she was tired of him treating me like a POS, and this time he took it way too far. All his yelling woke our child up and he finally left after telling me he was filling a police report. I was worried about how my wife was going to process what happened. I didn't want her having any doubts, so I told her I was running to the store to get a test for her peace of mind. She stopped me though and said that was entirely unnecessary. A full week went by without hearing a word from him. My sister-in-law called me one afternoon to say her dad just came by her house, with a gold chain around his neck. I was hurt because even when I was using, I never stole from anyone. I wasted money that I earned for my stupidity. I was bothered and decided I needed to call him out. He admitted to finding the necklace the next day after accusing me. He then said, "You did it to yourself when you decided to throw your life away. You'll always be the black sheep until the day you die." He hung up, of course without the common decency to utter sorry. I made it clear I didn't want him in our life, near our home and child. Last week, I came home early from work to find his truck in my driveway. I was upset because I felt like she overstepped my boundaries. She told me I need to learn to let things roll off my back. He's family and made a mistake. I told her she can't force me to have a relationship with him and go back to taking his abuse. She said she wasn't going to allow me to control her relationship with him any longer and I needed to get over my insecurities. I felt betrayed, but I also felt bad because I can see how my expectations of her going no contact with him could be a form of control. I'm 19 female, my dad's 42 male, oldest child. My parents were in their 20s when they got together, but the relationship didn't last very long. My dad ended up marrying my stepmom Kay, 37 female, when I was almost 12, and they had my brother C a while later, 6. Kay is pregnant again with a girl, due in a few months. My dad wasn't really in my life when I was growing up. I was aware of him and he was aware of me, but beyond some phone calls, my attendance at his wedding and the occasional Christmas, we aren't close to each other. His wife on the other hand is wonderful. She's always calling me to see how I'm doing, or letting me know what my brother has been up to. It's nice to know that she cares enough to include me when/where she can. Kay invited me to the gender reveal party, and though honestly I'm not really a fan of those things, I went because she seemed to really want me there and I thought it would be nice to see my brother too. When they popped the balloon and a bunch of pink confetti came out, my dad looked in my direction but then went back to celebrating with his wife, so I thought nothing of it. After the party though, I was helping clean up a bit and my dad came up to me and asked if we could talk. We went out to the front of the house and he started telling me that with Kay being pregnant again, this time with a girl, he felt like he was getting a second chance to right all the wrongs he made with me. He promised me that he would be there for his daughter this time, that she wouldn't grow up with just phone calls and a few holiday visits. I just stood there feeling like I was going to cry while he kept talking, but when he was done I told him that it didn't matter how good of a dad he was going to be to my new sister, it was never going to ease the guilt he felt about being a horrible father to me. I said that if he really wanted to soothe his conscience, he had 19 years to try. He said he was sorry I felt that way and then asked that I not tell Kay about our conversation. I left without saying anything else. When I got home I went to my room and cried. I told my mom what happened, and she said that I had every right to feel the way that I do, but my dad is trying and I should have tried to see where he was coming from. She didn't think it was fair of me to be mean to him on such a happy occasion. I felt justified for what I said in the beginning, but now I don't know if it was the right time to do it. Am I the a-hole?